All right, welcome to the third of our panel this week of the first ever CCIW College Athletics Webinar, Career in College Athletics Webinar. My name is Rusty Lindsay. I'm the Athletics Communication Assistant at Wheaton College, and I'll be your moderator for our third and final session this week, which the topic today is pursuing a career in college administration. Today, we're joined by three panelists from Carroll University, Director of Athletics Mike Schulist, from North Central College, Associate Athletic Director and Senior Women Administrator Sue Kane, and from Elmhurst University, Associate Director of Athletics Glen, Brittich. Panelists, thank you for being a part of our webinar this afternoon. Some quick info on our panelists. Mike Schulist was named the Carroll University's Director of Athletics in August of 2019, following a 12-year stint where he served in a variety of roles within the Pioneer Athletics Department, including Events and Facilities Coordinator and Sports Information Director. Schulist holds a Master of Sports Science degree in Sports Administration from the U.S. Sports Academy and a Bachelor of Science in Sports Administration from the University of Wisconsin-Parkside. Schulist has played a major role in overseeing large university capital projects related to athletics. Most recently, he assisted in two major projects that enhanced Pioneer athletics. He helped oversee the remodeling of Van Male Fieldhouse and was part of a Carroll contingent that helped facilitate the acquisition and construction of Hartle Field, the school's second artificial outdoor playing surface. He currently serves as a member of the NCAA Division III Football Committee, where he administers the championship and selects the 32-team field. He was also a past member of the Division III Men's Soccer Committee. Mike, welcome, and thank you for serving as a panelist today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Sue Kane was named North Central College's Assistant Director of Athletics in February 2012 and was promoted to the position of Associate Athletic Director and Senior Women Administrator in the fall of 2017. Kane is responsible for managing and marketing home athletics events, as well as compliance and eligibility as the NCAA Healthcare Administrator and Title IX Deputy Coordinator. A member of the athletic senior staff, Kane serves on numerous committees, both for the athletics department as well as for the college as a whole. She is currently serving as the Behavior Intervention Team and Title IX Committee. A 2002 North Central graduate, Kane competed for the women's track and field team and was a member of Cardinals NCAA Division III National Champion 4x400 meter relay team in 1999. She was a 7-time individual CCIW champion, 4-time relay champion, and 2-time Most Outstanding Track Athlete Award winner in the CCIW Championship competition, helping the Cardinals win the 2002 CCIW team title. She was inducted into North Central's Athletics Hall of Fame in 2009. Sue, welcome, and thank you for joining us today as a panelist.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
After spending 6 years as an assistant coach with the Elmhurst football team, Glen Brittich transitioned to his new role of Assistant Director of Athletics in March of 2019. He spent 5 seasons as the Elmhurst football team's defensive coordinator. He was promoted to assistant head coach prior to the 2018 season and had previously served as the team's special teams coach and wide receivers coach in 2013. Prior to his arrival at Elmhurst in 2011, Glen spent 5 seasons as an assistant coach and head strength and conditioning coach at Carthage College. He worked with the defensive backs while at Carthage and coached 6 all-conference players. During the 2005 season, he was a graduate assistant coach at Grand Valley State and was part of the team's Division II National Championship team. A 2004 graduate of Albion College, Brittich was a 4-year starter and 2-time first-team all-conference selection for the Britons and was named the MIAA's defensive MVP in 2003. Glen, welcome, and thank you for serving as a panelist today.
Thanks a lot. Happy to be here.
We will also be joined by Mike Krisman, who serves as the CCIW's Assistant Executive Director, and he will be monitoring the chat function for questions from our audience. So if you have questions for one of our panelists today, make sure to type it into the Zoom chat function located at the bottom of the screen, and we will get to your questions once we get through the pre-screened questions. So with that, let's ask the first question, and Mike, we'll start with you. What is it that drew you to a career in college athletics administration?
Yeah, so I started in my undergrad at Parkside. I started to pursue a degree in sport administration, and I knew I wanted to be involved in sport actually when I was in high school. I went to Parkside to play soccer for a few years, ended up dropping out to focus on my career, and I always had envisioned that I wanted to work in professional sports. So one of the things, and I'll probably hit on this later in some other questions, is the goal of networking early and obtaining as many internships as possible. And it's not only just for the connections, but it also helped me at least decide what I wanted to do. And early on, I was able to land an internship with both the Milwaukee Brewers and the Milwaukee Wave. And at that time, I always thought that the Brewers were going to be my end goal. I had envisioned of either being a scout or trying to get in, somewhere in, baseball ops. And I realized that career was A, hard to come by. And then B, once I got involved with the Brewers, I realized that it wasn't exactly what I wanted. It was more or less me thinking that I'm a fan of that team and then thinking it was going to be all good and gravy. And the hours, weren't great. You're working during the games, you couldn't enjoy the game. So it really wasn't what I envisioned. So after those internships, I ended up being my summer before my senior year, I tried to refocus on what else was out there, what other opportunities were out in athletics. And college administration was brought up from a colleague I had at the time that was currently at Parkside. And he said, well, maybe, something in college athletics would be of interest. So I started to do some work internally with UW Parkside's athletic department. It still allowed me to be an opportunity to connect with, college athletes, still be involved at that level. And I was very fortunate enough that summer after graduation, Carroll actually had a graduate assistant opportunity opened up within their sports information department. So I applied for it, was fortunate enough to get it. Actually, the SID at that time was also the men's soccer coach who used to play for the Wave. So that's kind of a unique connection how I landed the job. For my internship with the Wave, there were some mutual connections there between Carroll and my prior internship. So it ended up being somewhat of a small world in that regard. And once I got into college athletics, I fell in love with it. And it really, helped me stay in tune with, what's important. That's providing the experiences to student athletes. Being a student athlete for a short time at the college level, something I missed dearly once I left to interact with it. And I was able to fulfill that, that void once I stepped into these roles. So it's definitely something worth pursuing if you're interested in it. It still helps you get that competition, competitive juices flowing, and you get to form, many lifelong connections along the way.
How do you feel like your time working in the sports information role helped transition you into the role that you have now, getting a feel for the administrator part of the job?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, I think it's becoming more of a trend of SIDs, taking the next leap into either assistant AD or even AD roles. And, I think it's important because SIDs were kind of always undervalued for some time, and now they're seen as a crucial piece of athletic departments, from the social media component, really just telling the story of student athletes. And starting as an SID, you got to work more hands-on with student athletes and really get to see kind of behind the scenes of what makes them tick, what they really want, what makes them feel, I guess, important, and kind of some things what they look for. Oftentimes when you get in the AD seat or administrative seat, you can kind of lose that connection with student athletes. And being an SID, made it very important to me to never lose that connection and to always, reach back out and see, well, what is it that they really want, rather than assuming what they want. So
let me ask you that same initial question. What is it that drew you to work in college athletics administration?
Sure. And I think that my path is probably the non-traditional, maybe atypical path, where I started in higher education, but really my focus was working within the admission office. So I spent 10 years of my career at North Central, initially in the admission office. Gradually, I just kind of worked my way up and gradually made it to the director level, but was really working specifically with our coaches on helping them develop recruitment plans. And this is when, really we, I would say, like, professionalized our recruiting process, particularly on the communications strategy side of the house, and incorporating all social media, digital media, right? That into our our recruitment process. So I kind of had, a natural in. Our coaches had really great buy-in. I was an athlete, I've been helping them for the past 10 years, build fantastic rosters in the admission side of the house. And I understood the world. So my transition to athletics was a little bit different, right? Where it was still higher education, but I didn't stumble upon it in the same vein or fashion of either being a coach who transitioned to administrator or sports information or an athletic trainer, right? It was a little bit of a different path in there, but just knowing the ins and outs of admission, knowing, especially being a Division III tuition-driven institution, how important that relationship is between the two was really just key for me.
You seem to have your hand in a lot of different pots as far as with the healthcare administrator, Title IX coordinator, marketing, but I think that highlights an aspect of at our level, the athletic director and the administration is certainly spread out among a lot of different roles. So how do you balance having time to cover all those aspects?
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge for sure when you wear so many different hats within an athletic department, but it's typical, right, of Division III. So for me, it's all about prioritizing, right, there's a cycle for almost everything except for that pile, right, that sometimes just lands on your desk that you're so happy that's landed on your desk that day. So really, it's just about prioritizing, right, what absolutely needs to happen today, what can wait until tomorrow, and future casting, and having great help around. One of the wonderful programs that we have at the institution is in a graduate assistant program, and we have an athletic administration GA, and I'm telling you, without having that opportunity, right, to be able to help somebody learn while also really getting some hands-on experience, it wouldn't be doable. So really, at the end of the day, it's about prioritizing and knowing when to delegate.
Glen, you were kind of nodding along there. You feel like it's kind of typical at especially the Division III level, where your job is certainly not a one-lane street, so to speak.
Yes, definitely. I think one of the things I like about my day-to-day is I wake up and I kind of don't really know what's going to happen that day. One day you're dealing with admissions, the next day you're dealing with budgets, the next day you're dealing with retention, and then the next day you're hosting a conference tournament. You definitely have to know a little bit about every aspect of the department, and you have to be very integrated with campus, and that personally excites me.
Well, let me ask you that initial question too. What was it that drew you into wanting to pursue the administration side of athletics?
Well, initially I didn't realize that I wanted to be in athletics administration. I was a student athlete. I was a football player, and I said, I'm going to coach, and that's what I'm going to do, and kind of had my career very much mapped out. And a couple years ago, I was approached from our vice president, said, I want you to jump into administration. I think you'd be really, really good at it. And as I started to realize what I really loved to do, I loved winning football games, but I really loved seeing the kids graduate. I really loved when I would get a reference call to help them get a job. I love the mentorship. I love the development. It comes back to my why. I love the mentorship, development, and the success of others. And I'm a lifelong learner. I love higher education. And I felt that being in athletic administration gave me such a large platform to serve our campus and to serve our student athletes. And I think, like Mike said, you still get your competitive juices flowing. You're still on the sidelines. You're still able to kind of have that a little bit, but you then get to also mentor coaches. You then get to see them get better, and you get to see GAs become full-time and full-time coaches improve and those sorts of things.
Again, want to remind, if you're joining us today and you have questions for the panel, go ahead and just put them in the Zoom group chat, and we will get to those as we go along here. Glen, you had mentioned the coaching wins, and Mike, let me ask you the same thing. You make the transition from coaching to administration. The wins look a little different. How does that transition go when you get out of the coaching avenue and what you're looking for as far as your day-to-day wins when you're in administration?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. day-to-day wins in administration, there's no doubt it's different. I see wins as anytime I can, help support either my coaches or ultimately through my coaches, help make the student athlete experience better is always the number one win in my book. And that can be very small things. I mean, it doesn't necessarily always have to be a new facility. It can be, trying to work on, enhanced, travel, trying to, limit travel issues, or helping facilitate an issue with a, faculty member, or, I'm just trying to think, some smaller topics here on a day-to-day basis, but there's something every day that will come across your desk that you'll have to make some type of decision on for the betterment of the student athletes. And, those are where the wins add up. And most of the time the students doesn't necessarily see that. But, in the long run, the coaches and the student athletes, whether they see it or not, will, be supportive of those decisions and the work that the administration puts in on the back end.
So what do you feel are, oh, sorry, Luca, you want to add on there?
Yeah, I would just say that wins come in big and small packages, and it comes down to why you're doing what you're doing, right? If you're coaching, your wins are winning the game. But if you're in administration, your wins are in some different ways, whether it's, the other day I found out that one of our student athletes passed the Illinois bar. And that's a huge win. Came in, struggled at times as a student athlete, and then all of a sudden, was very successful. The wins just come in different packages.
So let me ask you the next question we have. What do you feel are some of the most important aspects of your job, and how do you see those aspects helping your student athletes?
Oh my gosh, for sure. So obviously, being, the senior woman administrator and Title IX coordinator, really making sure that from an equity standpoint, especially from an experience, that I am, 100%, digging in on that side of the house all the time. So my AD will tell you I'm the biggest pain in the rear end that has probably ever existed. And when I have a bone, you have a hard time, getting away from me, right? So really it's about, for me, it's about fighting the good fight, right? And making sure that we're 100% all the time using a diverse and equitable and inclusive lens, period, right across the board. So for me, that's some of the most important aspect of the work that I do, not only from, gender, right, with, being the senior woman administrator in Title IX, but also all other forms of, diversity as well. So really that to me about providing, the most amazing experience, which, is a part of our institution. We value, right, that's a part of our core values, and just making sure that we're holding on to that at all times. So for me, that's just, personally where I'm invested, and that I get, right, a whole lot of, personal satisfaction and gratification out of that kind of work.
Can you kind of elaborate on the Title IX issue? Because I think a lot of times that can get pigeonholed for those who aren't familiar with it, but can you kind of elaborate on what that role involves? Yeah,
so for sure it's changed, right, or evolved. And I think that maybe people's perceptions of his role. Title IX is really an umbrella, right, of so many different aspects. I think that it became maybe a little bit sensationalized in the 70s and, specific just to, sports, right? And women having an opportunity, and girls, right, having an opportunity to be able to play sports. But really, it encompasses so many other avenues, including, right, sexual misconduct and, really sexual harassment, and making sure that our students, our student athletes, everyone on campus, is well versed in those different areas. So I spent a ton of time doing a lot of education. Being one of the Title IX deputy coordinators for the institution, I have specific training requirements that I have to hit every single year to be able to be an on-campus educator for our student athletes. So just making sure that they know, right, at the end of the day, all the different facets of it, and that what the expectations are of our environment.
Mike, let me ask you the question I initially asked you there. What do you feel are the most important aspects of your job, and how do you feel those aspects positively impacting your student athletes?
Yeah, I think it's touch points. It's especially at the Division III level. It's to not, be comfortable. It's to always try and push yourself to be uncomfortable and to always stay engaged with, the certain constituents that, come with athletics. It's the student athletes, it's the coaches, it's athletic trainers, sports information staff, grounds crew, all of the above. And just maintaining, that constant communication and appreciation of, the work that's being done. And then touch points also goes, above and beyond into the competitive world of college athletics and what other universities are doing, whether facility wise, recruiting, social media, the list goes on, and making sure that, essentially your department, does not fall behind on, the trends that are currently out there. And if you do that and do those things, and be transparent and stay in touch and, continue to communicate, hopefully that will, help bring back the experience back to the student athletes, and that they can appreciate, the environment that's around them. Again, that can be small things and large things. It can be, different music for, introducing the starting lineups or sound bites during games, or minor improvements to the game day atmosphere. But I think it's just important to stay in tuned, to never try to sit in the in the ivory tower and think you're above things, to stay in touch with those and really try to be that servant leader.
You had mentioned facilities there, and you've had a couple of facilities projects, and that can be a bit of an arms race at the college level. So
Yeah.
How do you go about tackling facility upgrades and approaching capital projects that involve tapping into your alumni base and fundraising and what can be sometimes a dirty job, it feels like?
Yeah, that's a loaded question there. I could probably write a novel on that. I'll try to make it short. The first thing I think you need to do is try to, when there's a project on the table, obviously understand what, administration is thinking, senior leadership, president, cabinet, et cetera, and, what their goals are, what you have to work with. And then from there, you try to relay that message and try to gain input from student athletes, coaches, and users of whatever facility you're working on, and try to align those visions together to see, what makes sense within the budget, right? And then you try and set a budget, and you try and, then go into some fundraising, or, if you're lucky enough that your administration has or senior leadership has some money built up, and try to finance a project. And then obviously then you get into the construction phase, which isn't just as simple as turning it over to a firm or a construction company and letting them go with it, because things change along the way. And there's many hurdles that go through that process. But it's I think the main piece of that anytime you do construction projects is many people think about the budget, but it's really the users, and making sure that they understand what's happening, and then making sure you get their input. If you go through a project and don't get input of the users, whether it be the student athletes or coaches, you start to create a bad culture. The other piece of that of experience that I've dealt with is facility that the public also uses, so the general community, and making sure you get neighborhood buy-in. One of the projects we did, we redeveloped a field that was previously owned by the city. And there was a lot of pushback from the city thinking that, well, Carroll's just going to purchase this and it's just going to be Carroll's. And we had to make a strong push to communicate that, this wasn't only just going to be Carroll's facility, that we were going to get back to the community and make sure that it was a joint venture. So there's a lot more to that, but hopefully that helped tackle the higher level issues.
Glenn, what do you feel are the most important aspects of your job, and how do you feel that positively affecting your student athletes?
I think at the end of the day, and as Mike and Sue also talk about, we're doing everything we can to provide a great experience for our student athletes. And at the Division III level, I believe we're very fortunate to have our hand in a lot of different cookie jars and have the ability to impact their lives on a day-to-day basis in many ways. And to me, I see the way that my conduit to the student athletes is through the coaches and through the athletic trainers and those types of people and the sports staff, and any mentorship and guidance and communication I can provide to them in terms of how we want to create that student athlete experience, really translates to the student athletes. I believe in the mentorship piece. I believe in the communication piece across the board. And then developing a foundation for the department, which then translates to the student athletes and how each program is supported and how each student athlete is supported. And then at the end of the day, they see the wins and then they're happy. And at the end of the day, graduation is one of those fantastic days.
Again, just want to remind anybody that has a question for our panelists to throw it into the group chat, and we will get to it. Glenn, let me ask you then, you mentioned earlier the satisfaction that comes at the end of the collegiate career. So what do you feel are the most important lessons you want your student athletes to take away from their time at Elmhurst?
Are you referring mostly towards going into being a college administrator or just in general?
I think just in general, what are your hopes that their experience there would prepare them for life after their 4 years there?
The thing that I always come back to is I want us to graduate proud alums. And that's a very simple statement. But if you really think about when someone graduates from an institution, if they look back and they say, you know what, I love my alma mater. There's a lot of tentacles to that. It could be athletics, it could be academics, it could be student government, it could be Greek life. But have you given them the opportunity to have the experience that they want? As we talk to coaches or have coached or talked about a lot of different student athletes, they all want different things out of their experience. Some want to be dual sport athletes, right? Some want to study abroad. Some want to do all these different things. And if we can support them in their endeavor to get out of college what they really want, they're going to leave being very, very proud. And that's the goal, because at the end of the day, it's going to be a trickle down effect, and word of mouth is going to spread to other student athletes, potential student athletes, and you're just going to create a great environment. So create proud alums.
So let me ask you the same question. What are the most important lessons you try to get across to your student athletes to prepare them for when they leave college?
Yeah, it's a simple model that we talk about all the time with our student athletes and our coaches and me in my role, like right in my impact is, we want to leave this place better than how we found it, right? And it's the same thing with your teams. We talk about that all the time with our student athletes. It's like, what can you do? Like, right? You within your own personal growth, your character, et cetera, to make this team right now a better place for all of the future Cardinals to come. So for us, it's all about that simple motto. I think about that all the time, right? In my work and the impact that I'm having. And every day when I show up, it's, every day is a fresh start. What new impact am I going to have on the work? How am I making this process better, more efficient? How are we really digging deep on, education on a variety of different things? How are we making this experience overall the best? When I think about healthcare for our student athletes, how are we providing the best student healthcare, given the resources and everything that we have? So for us, it's really comes down to kind of that simple motto.
Mike, let me ask you the same question. What are the important lessons you hope your student athletes leave Carroll with?
Yeah, Glen and Sue hit on some good points. Obviously, selfishly from, the Glen hit on the, alumni standpoint, you hope they have a good experience, that they stay engaged, and come back, and whether it's to vote, it's more than just, resources and money, but their time to, whether it's offer if they end up doing well in their career, they can come back and offer an internship or advice back to, the current student athletes. But I think to hit on more of a tangible item, the big thing I tell our student athletes is to, make sure they remember their experience and they utilize that in the workforce. Whether, it's their resume or applying for jobs. I mean, time management is a big thing nowadays that, I think everybody's moving at 50 miles an hour, and being a collegiate athlete, I think gives an advantage to those just starting out in the workforce, that they do have lots of time management experience, from balancing academics, athletics, and sometimes even, work to help pay rent. I mean, I'm continuously amazed, day in and day out by some of our student athletes here at Carroll on, the success that they can provide both, on the court, field, pool, and also in the classroom, and then find out they're also doing an internship, clinical, and also working part-time to make some money. It's crazy. And to make them understand that they're actually using that and articulating that story to their employers, to their future is crucial.
Mike, you and Glenn have both kind of spoken about culture. How do you go about building a culture and a philosophy within your department?
Yeah. Being, I guess, starting my second year as AD now, I've been at Carroll for going on 14 years now. So kind of in a unique experience going through prior administration and coming into this role. I've already, had a unique opportunity to build relationships with coaches. But I think it starts and ends with relationship and trust. If you can build those two things within your department, I think that trickles down, from the coaches end to their student athletes, from the ATs to the student athletes, that trust, is there, that we're all serving the mission, whatever that mission is. Each department may have a different mission. Here at Carroll, we try to say, within our staff that, we're all driving the same bus, we're all in the same bus, and, we're taking it in the same direction. And, as long as everybody's on the bus and going on, the same ride, eventually, whether we know it or not, that culture then will relay to the people surrounding us.
Yeah. Glenn, how do you build that and balance that within having every program come at it through their own lens and trying to get all these different programs to buy into the same philosophy, and get them just to look outside of themselves to the bigger department?
Great and loaded question. When you have 20 sports that are all trying to pull in their direction and you're trying to pull them in one. I think Mike hit on a lot of great points. And the thing that I would add is consistency in your messaging. As a leader, I think if you always communicate and you make decisions and you're always consistent with why you're doing what you're doing, then all the coaches are going to understand the direction that you're heading. And it's going to rub off on the coaches because they're going to understand and they're going to want to pull in that same direction when they start to see some success. But as a leader, I think you always have to start with, why you're doing what you're doing, the consistency in that messaging to your coaches, and then constantly talking to them. And Mike also hit on the word transparency, making sure they understand why you're doing it. Gone are the days where you just tell somebody to do something and it's because I said so. You really have to give your coaches the why. And then over time, they'll start to understand it. And then to give the coaches, really empower them to run their programs. It's easy to try to micromanage everything, but they need to feel some ownership under your guidance. And if they're empowered to run their programs and they understand what the philosophy is of what you're trying to build in the department, then it's going to be a lot easier to build that culture.
So you can kind of approach this from a unique aspect of having to work first for the college and then transitioning into athletics. So how does that athletics administration culture play into the larger culture of the institution? And how do you marry those two into a functioning relationship when they can sometimes be at odds?
Yeah, we've always, been really fortunate, like right where we've had a great working relationship with what we call the north end of campus, and then the south end of campus where athletics is located. But if you don't, if you have, partners, across campus who are unwilling to be able to work together, it really is so it creates such a detrimental, right, experience for your student athletes, because you are never going to be able to move so many different important programs forward, and it's just going to negatively impact the experience of the student athlete. So, for us, it's just having a really strong presence on the north end of campus. That's probably why I sit on about 12 different committees. I'm fortunate that we have a great cabinet who really are strong supporters of athletics and true fans, and value, right, the input from our athletics perspective. But, knowing full well that, we are always doing everything, in our power in athletics to really drive home that, we are Division III, right? This is a true, student athlete experience, and doing everything to marry those two different aspects of their experience as both students and athletes. So it really is just having open lines of communication. When there is an issue, when something arises, just immediately picking up the phone and just be able to say, hey, coach, right, I heard this happened, right in the cafeteria, or I heard, this, a professor was calling about, this reason, and just immediately tackling it. And once again, I think that both Glenn and Mike talk about it. It's just being transparent, right? To be able to say that, this is going on, or this came up, what's happening, give me some more information, and let's figure out a very creative way to be able to quickly solve the problem, and just so all folks are on the same page. So for us, it's just about just constantly keeping those lines of communication open, and being really transparent across the campus.
Just want to remind everybody that if you do have a question for our panelists, to put it in the group chat function, and we'll get to that here in a second. Sue, what do you feel like, what advice would you offer to those who would be interested in going into athletic administration, and what are some good first steps to get there?
For sure. I think just start off by working a network, right? In terms of just start doing some preliminary Zoom and phone interviews, and literally just saying to athletic administrators, tell me about your day, right? Tell me about the aspects of your job, just so you can kind of get some general information. I think the next important step would be doing internships, and then moving, if you really figure out within your undergraduate experience that that's something that you're interested in. There are so many graduate assistantship opportunities available to get some really phenomenal hands-on experience. So that would be my advice for folks who are first just kind of getting interested in it.
Glenn, let me ask you the same question there. What advice do you offer to those pursuing this, and what's a good place for them to start?
Yeah, I really tell people to get involved. Try to find any way to get any kind of experience. And if you are an undergrad, go to the AD, go to the assistant AD, say, hey, I just want to try to learn the business, and really try to get your hand in as many different areas of the athletic department as you can. I would say that the ultimate goal is to figure out why you want to be in athletic administration, because if you want to be in Division I, you want to be in Division II, you want to be in Division III, they're very, very different jobs. If you want to be in game ops, if you want to be in compliance, if you want to be in leadership roles, they're all very different. So figuring out why you want to be in administration through all those experiences, I think would be a good thing. And I will echo what Sue said, just call people. I had an hour-long Zoom today from someone across the country that just said, I want to talk to someone and learn about your job. And most administrators will be open to doing that, because you got to figure it out. And I would say this, I didn't realize there are so many jobs in college athletics that I never knew of as a student athlete. I never had any idea. So expose yourself to different things and learn different things. And through that, you will also do all the great networking that Sue mentioned to start to get those connections, because you're really going to get that job from someone that you've crossed paths with.
There we go. Mike, how about you? What advice would you have for those who are interested in this, and where would you advise they start?
Yeah, so, Sue and Glenn hit on some good stuff. Obviously, if, we're talking specifically here to student athletes, they have a opportunity right in front of them within their own athletic department. So I think Glenn hit on this, talk to the coach, talk to assistant ADs, talk to the AD to, find out what our opportunities are out there, pick their brains on, what's happening in the day-to-day, life of those positions. And then, the other thing that I'll hit that I don't know if Sue and Glenn hit on is, get involved with SAC. If you're not involved with Student Athlete Advisory Committee, get involved. If it's not something that's prominent on campus, make it prominent. Be a leader within that organization. And then from there, if you can get involved with your own athletic department, there are a lot of good opportunities through the NCAA, leadership programming for students, for student athletes. Fortunately, I had two that I did some applications or helped some applications for some student leader programs through NCAA. The NCAA provides amazing opportunities to network, and to build your resume. So there's opportunities there, but I would say start with what you got right in front of you at your institution to see what you can leverage there. And then Sue and Glenn both said you can start there. That should give you a leg up in trying to get a GA opportunity. If you're not familiar with the NCAA marketplace, I would get familiar with that now. Start building your resume, making those connections, keep an eye on the marketplace for GA opportunities. And then don't feel, as Sue and Glenn both said, don't be shy to reach out. You can reach out to myself or, really any of my administrators here at Carroll. I know we'd be glad to help, anybody's career to get into athletics.
Glenn, what's one of the, as you've kind of grown into the job, what's one of the unexpected things that you have to do in your role that maybe as you're approaching a position like this, you wouldn't have expected to be something that you have to deal with?
I would say the gravity of probably every situation that you deal with, every decision you make, it impacts so many people. You really have to understand that everything you're dealing with on a daily basis affects generally at least an entire team, which affects a lot of people. So understanding that, but I would also say the flexibility. You never know what's going to land on your desk that day. You never know, what fire is going to happen. You never know what's going to go on, positive or negative. So you got to be very flexible. And then Sue mentioned this a lot, and I really didn't anticipate this, being involved across campus on so many other different committees. We are very intertwined, athletics and the other side of the house at Division III, and always being asked to be on this committee and that committee, which are all exciting, but didn't really anticipate that. Didn't anticipate being part of all those other things. And it's been phenomenal to do those, to have those experiences and serve our students as well. But you always think, okay, well, we're going to run games and we're going to deal with budgets and those pieces. But now all of a sudden you're working on retention or whatever the case might be with some of the other committees that also serve the students.
Sue, how about you? What's something that you didn't expect to be a part of your day-to-day that might be that for those who are interested in a position like yours that maybe they should expect, even though they don't?
Yeah, you have to be so flexible and nimble and be ready to move almost at any second of the day. No day looks the same. Like there's not a single day. My calendar doesn't look the same. What lands on my desk doesn't look the same. What's in my voicemail, email, it's all very different. I feel like when I was previously doing my work in admissions, it was very cyclical. Like, right, you can pretty much anticipate while things change a little bit, but you can pretty much anticipate. In athletics, that's just not it. So I think that I probably struggled with that the first year or so of trying to find some semblance of balance. It still doesn't exist, but I said semblance of balance in there. And I think like the probably hardest part for me was just learning to truly prioritize, okay, here is what absolutely has to get done today. And the rest of it is going to be there tomorrow and it will get done. And really just kind of processing through that. I was the type of person who had my checklist and I was going to get these 3 things done today and everything was going to be, fantastic. Well, that doesn't happen in our world and we have to be really nimble and be able to pivot immediately every day. I feel like 8 times a day. So that's it for me.
Mike, how about you? What are some of the other unexpected parts of your job?
Yeah, I think Glenn hit on this nicely. It's, how intertwined athletics is with, across campus. I think this is somewhat common, and I'll just hit on an experience specifically at Carroll, but I never thought that I would be on a search committee to hire a new chaplain for the university. And, as an AD, here I am. And I think that hits on the uniqueness of Division III. Currently athletics, I do not report directly to the president. Some do, but I report to our VP of Student Affairs. So it's one thing that, as I got into the business, I wasn't very aware of the reporting structure. So because I report to Student Affairs, whether I like it or not, I do a lot of student affairs-y things, which is fine. And I enjoy it. So, it's not always just athletics. Every day there's opportunities to get to know other people across campus, which, ultimately helps support you in your position. But you get to do things outside of athletics I never thought I'd be doing today. So it's good stuff.
This question from Jonathan and Glenn, let me start with you here. As administrators, are you open to students reaching out and asking about positions or opportunities that may not be listed? And how would you go about them approaching inquiring about a position that might not be openly advertised or available?
Well, to answer the first part, am I open? Yes. Well, I think 100%, shoot an email. I think you never know. And if you're going about things in a professional manner, I think a lot of administrators, respect that. I think back when I was in coaching, and that was a little bit different, where it's kind of hard to really approach some coaches because it's a really tight-knit circle. I think administrators are very open to trying to help young professionals and help others and try to improve. What was the second part of the question? Is there a better way to go about? I think it's just, again, kind of communicate, put yourself out there. You never know when it's like, oh yeah, we got this opportunity, it may be an internship, and that one person emailed me. I got to go back and check. You never know. I think it's okay. Just do it in a professional manner. But also reach through your network, talk to the people that are at your institution and see if they know of anybody that it's okay to reach out to and things of that nature.
Mike, I think that builds on what you mentioned earlier with the network, and maybe this can go into a little bit more depth on how you would recommend students maybe use networking to go about approaching administrators about these positions that may not be openly advertised.
Yeah, I mean, networking is key because, you got to build a brand around your name, and it's not easy to do. You can make phone calls, and or drop emails to administrators to check in on things, but, we have so many things going on that it's hard to, keep those names straight. And, you got to try to do something where, we'll remember, you for something down the road. And, ultimately it's more than just a phone call. It's trying to establish a relationship. So I would say, if you can get in, and start a relationship with any type of administrator, it's not just a single phone call. You do follow-ups and you try to stay in contact. It's one thing that I learned. I've been very blessed to, be a part of some leadership opportunities, both within the NCAA and just locally. And, I try and either text or make phone calls, monthly to these colleagues and just stay in touch, because you never know what's going to happen on the road. And, those friendships and, relationships you make, will pay dividends at some point.
So we had talked about you having a lot of different things under your purview. So how do you feel like this maybe applies to where you're set up with having all of these different avenues under you, that if students were to reach out, they may not even be aware of where they can help plug in to something that you oversee?
Yeah, I think, personally, I'm completely open to it. And like Glenn, I'm constantly taking phone calls and Zooms, right? And previously having lunch dates with people that I didn't even know, just to be able to help out and chat. So I would just really encourage students to do it. It's time well spent, even if it's 15 minutes, like, right? Like I'm always able to carve out just a little bit of time for students. And I think it's worth the conversation because I think that you learn a lot, like, right? The students will absolutely learn a whole lot about different opportunities. And, you know, it gives them an opportunity to truly assess at the end of the day, you know, if this is something that they're interested in. So for sure, I'm open to it.
Sue, let me stay with you for this next question. What specific skill set have you improved upon since mid-March as a result of the pandemic? And let me add to that, how have you seen your department kind of have to adjust how they do business because of this?
Who asked that
how
question?
they've been able to improve?
Is that a sleeper cell in there? Who asked that question? I want to know. So yeah, I was a lucky winner that got to chair our athletics COVID response team, which, you know, started with really formulating, right, the plan of returning to athletics. And I have just lived in COVID world forever, ever since that point. It's Mike Zapolski. I knew it. And so for me, really at the end of the day, I think that this pandemic has really forced athletics departments to be able to use data, like, right, in a way that they've never really used it before to help them drive almost every single decision, right, that they're making. So it really, for us, you know, we have a COVID dashboard, and, you know, almost every single day, I'm looking at that data and helping to make decisions on what teams are online, offline, you know, who's in quarantine and isolation, and all the above, to help us figure this all out. So for us, it was really honing in on data driven. We were always a very, you know, I would say that in terms of our integration into campus, I feel like COVID has probably forced a lot of other athletic departments to have to really be integrated into campus, right, to be able to successfully pull it off. So that's not something that, you know, we necessarily, it was anything new for us. But I think as our department, oh my gosh, it has taught us to be incredibly nimble and patient and kind with one another, of when folks want an answer tomorrow or want to just practice, like, right? You know, being able just to be really, you know, patient and gracious with one another when we really have to use that data and guidance from our health departments as to what our next move and next step is going to be. So it's been quite the journey.
Mike, how have you seen your department kind of attack having to change the way they've done things in light of the pandemic? And what have you seen, maybe a skill set that you've seen improved because of it?
Yeah, you know, skill set, you know, communication and patience. You know, communication is something that always can be worked on. I feel like almost I'm more in tune now with my coaches and support staff than ever before, because we probably talk frequently. And then obviously technology has been somewhat of a blessing in this pandemic world. Obviously using Zoom, which we're using now, or Microsoft Teams, we've been able to utilize those platforms, you know, in a way to keep us going. And I don't see, you know, Zoom or Teams going away. A lot of us have gotten comfortable with those tools, and, you know, while I still see a lot of benefit with in-person meeting and communication, I do think that the technology will help, you know, recruiting for coaches mainly, you know, even fundraising, with trying to engage with constituents, you know, that may not live or be able to come back to campus as often. So it's provided, you know, some unique settings to hopefully make us better post-pandemic.
Glenn, how about you? What's something that you've seen improve within your skill toolbox since the pandemic, and how have you seen things kind of shift your operating mode there at Elmhurst?
Well, I would say that due to some of the unfortunate things that happened over the summer with George Floyd, it really allowed me to look at the way I approach things with a lens that I need to educate myself more. And I've spent a lot of time trying to listen and trying to educate myself on the experiences of others. And that has really allowed me to lead our coaches in a much broader way, where I can talk to them about, hey, are you having conversations with student athletes about safe spaces, or, where they need to be able to talk to people, and really kind of broadening my lens to that. And that's been a really a blessing for me to see that, so I can serve, our coaches and our student athletes better. And then for our department, I would say you're always trying to, here's the old thing. Well, we got to provide a great experience for our student athletes. And that means an extra warm up or an extra sweatshirt or an extra, pair of shorts or whatever. And really dialing that back and going, okay, what do our student athletes really need to have a great experience? And it doesn't necessarily mean apparel. It doesn't necessarily mean things that hit the budget, but really dialing back and going, okay, how do we create a great student athlete experience? And almost being a little bit more frugal and minimalistic, as I'm sure that, Sue and Mike can relate to right now, and being very grateful. And yeah, oh my God, we got a week of practice. We were able to get in the weight room. I remember going back to April, and you talk to some spring coaches, really March, and they'd go, okay, well, we're going to be shut down for 2 weeks, but are we going to be able to get back to our softball season, our baseball season? I'm like, I don't think so. Don't count on it. And now it's like, hey, whatever happens in the spring, we're going to be able to do something for our student athletes. And I think it really kind of maybe brought us down a peg to say, hey, okay, what is our real mission here? Our mission's here to serve our student athletes. It's to find a great experience for them, and really focus on trying to be creative in doing that, instead of just providing them with, gear or the things that I think got kind of traditional.
Glenn, you had mentioned it there, so let me get to this question from Alex here. What do you see being the expectation and hopes for next semester with getting teams back on the field and competing again?
Number one, I really hope that we can do it in an extremely safe manner. I want to make sure that I know the statistics out there are that every college age student is going to be generally okay if they contract the virus. But, when you start talking about support staff and families and things like that, I want to make sure that we're doing it in an extremely safe manner. And Sue, hats off to you for leading the COVID response. I'm happy that I'm not as heavily involved. But that's my number one thing. And the second piece is to provide these students with an outlet to compete. That's it. Find them with an outlet to compete. I mean, if you think about what happened yesterday with the Steelers and the Ravens, and, was it a JV team, as the Steelers coach was trying to say? And at some point I read an interview, and one of the players said, you know what, we got to play. And, maybe it gets to a point where, us in North Central got to play constantly because we're close and we can't travel across state lines or whatever, but our kids, they get to play. And that's it. Safety and finding a way for them to quench their thirst of competing.
Sue, I want to give you the final word here, so I'm going to go to Mike first. Mike, let me ask you that same question. What are your expectations and hopes for next semester and bringing athletics safely back to the field?
Yeah, so number one, obviously, is keeping them safe, which is the primary goal, but also, to continue to get better, and whether it's through competition or, continued human performance or strength and conditioning or whatever that may be, studying the playbook, just having an opportunity to get with, their coaches is the primary goal. And then obviously for spring sports in particular, for those spring athletes that got their season cut short last year, it's doing everything and anything we possibly can to make sure that experience this year is as least interfered with as possible. And I think our student athletes, I don't just speak for Carroll's, but I think across the CCW have been very understanding and appreciative of the opportunities we've been able to provide them, with where we're currently at, and we'll continue to educate them and where we're at and what are the things we're trying to do. But ultimately we want to, make sure they're safe and, try to give them the best experience possible this semester.
Sue, given your role on the response team there at North Central, how does that question look like to you, and maybe how do you approach that that maybe a little differently, having to deal with the data all the time?
Yeah, so I think that our number one goal, right, is to be able to provide our students with an in-person residential experience, right? That's what they want. And so for us in athletics, it's kind of working backwards from that point of how does athletics fit into that piece, right? Where we can remain open and have that in-person experience for our students. Because they want to be in the classroom on campus. So, for us, it's just developing, kind of the maximizing every piece of data, every piece of guidance that's coming down from the NCAA, every resource that we can get our hands on to be able to figure out the best way to be able to do that. We probably take a very conservative approach at North Central in terms of just with the amount of testing that we did throughout the fall, and even where we're probably going to land in the spring as well. We're going to be maximizing out the number of tests that we are doing almost on a weekly basis, just to be able to continue to have that experience. So however we can do it in the most safe manner that, like, first and foremost still allows our campus to have an in-person residential experience, that's how we're going to do it.
Well, again, I want to thank Glen, Mike, Sue for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate your insights and wish you guys the best. And of course, stay safe and the best to your departments and your teams as we move forward into the next semester. And also want to thank all of our student athletes who joined us this evening. Hope you'll have a good rest of your evening and a great holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.